everyone, it's Rebecca McAdam for Card Player TV with another edition of Strategy. Now recently we caught up with high stakes cash game pro Brian Stinger Hastings to discuss value betting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think getting max value out of the hands you make in a tournament is just one of the most important things because, I mean, you're only going to get like a certain amount of hands that, like, and maximizing your value just really helps your expectation in the tournament. For example, I had one hand on day 2 where I flat called a raise with ace queen, and the flop came ace jack 4, and he checked, I bet, and he called a bet. Turn was a 7, he check called again, and then the river was a 4, and he checked, and I made a big river bet and got called by a worse hand. And I think that's a spot where not like a lot of players would probably try to check behind for pot control there and just like wouldn't get max value out of your hands. And I think just earning as many chips as you can when you have good hands is a really important part of maximizing your value in tournaments. You're certainly looking for the more straightforward types when you're trying to value bet thin, because getting check raise when you're value betting thin is always a nightmare. Good players can take advantage of that and exploit you when they realize like what you're doing value betting too thin. But against the more passive players, when you're not really worried about getting check raise, and it's not the end of the world if sometimes you make a value bet and get called by a slightly better hand. Those are the kind of guys that you're really trying to get the max value against. It's all situational. A lot of it varies depending on board textures. I mean, the more draws miss and like the more plausible it is that you'll get looked up by a really weak made hand, the more likely you should be to go for max value. But I mean, there are some spots where you're just not really ever going to get paid off with weakish hands, and then sometimes you should be taking more pot controlling lines there. And I mean, there is value also in just trying to protect your stack and protect your tournament life. And so it's all situational. It depends a lot on the board textures and the player you're playing against. I think it does a little bit. In cash games, you're always looking to make the plus EV play, whereas in tournaments, like, you do have to take other factors into consideration, like your stack size at the time, and how many chips you're going to have left if you like erroneously value bet. So sometimes with certain stack sizes it might be better to just take pot control line, and also the way your table is playing too. Like at a table where like the table's a little bit softer, you might not want to take the risk of making like a marginally, you think, plus EV play, and when it might end up hurting you and then forcing you to play a lot tighter than you normally want to because you're on the short stack.